There's nothing to me more frustrating as a trainer when I get that call that says, hey, can you come do an hour of training? And how much is that? And I go, okay, let's talk about your desired outcomes from this. What are you trying to change? What are the challenges you're having? You know, my biggest pet peeve was like, can you come and do a team building for an hour? And I hate that word. And I'm like, I actually now have created a talk that says we need another team building, said no one ever. Right?
I love that. I love that.
And it's you know, said no one ever. I wrote a blog on that. I'll find that blog and send it to you.
Please.
It's like you don't need another team building. You need another leadership developing. That's what you need. But they don't know how to articulate that they're having challenges and problems. And they're like, oh, a team building, that'll fix everything. And we'll do it in an hour.
Right.
And I give the same speech. I'm like, you're listening to The Pivotal Leader, where modern leaders talk about the moments that shifted their organizational cultures and pivoted their teams to success. Hey everybody, this is Gina Trimarco, Chief Results Officer of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. Each week on The Pivotal Leader, I feature inspirational leaders who know how to positively impact their customers, employees, and brand through culture building. And if you need some help around culture building, or if you're looking for some fresh ways to keep your stakeholders engaged, shoot me an email at gina@pivot10.com or visit our website at pivot10.com and let me know what problems you might be having or challenges you're trying to overcome, and I will respond back and give you some of my thoughts around that. So let's jump on in. In this episode of The Pivotal Leader, I interviewed Aaron Davis, speaker, author, thought leader, and noted authority on peak performance. Known as the Enthusiator because of his contagious enthusiasm to equip others to perform like champions, Aaron's powerful and high-energy presentations are interactive, fresh, yet simple so that anyone can use his tips and techniques to attain greater success professionally and personally. And can't we all use that? Aaron's past experience as a national champion football player with the University of Nebraska has equipped him with firsthand knowledge of how to achieve incredible results. As a speaker, author, and seminar leader, Aaron has had the privilege of delivering hundreds of presentations at various conferences, meetings, and seminars across the nation with outstanding success to over 1 million people. Aaron is a member of the National Speakers Association, the co-author of 2 books, and the author of the inspiring book, 10-Minute Truths. As a seminar leader for the University of Nebraska's Corporate Manager Certification Program, Aaron's presentations have received some of the highest ratings by attendees in the program's 24-year history. He has served clients in various sectors and levels of industries, including government, agriculture, medical, mortgage, sales, insurance, banking, and education. Aaron graduated from the University of Nebraska with a degree in psychology. So important. I think psychology, if everybody had a degree in that, everybody would make more money. While in college, Aaron was a member of the Nebraska football team, which in 1994 won the national championship. So let's dive into this episode and learn something or two from Aaron. All right. Hey, Aaron, welcome to The Pivotal Leader.
How you doing? It's good to be on the show. How are you today?
I am awesome. How about yourself?
Doing great. Couldn't be better.
Good. Well, I'm really excited to talk to you. I know you sent me your bio, but I had already kind of stalked you a little bit and cobbled some stuff together. I think you're going to like the bio that I rewrote for you. So you'll see that in the show notes once this podcast goes live. But one of the coolest things, I really like that you're called the Enthusiator. Tell me a little more. It sounds like a superhero.
It's something I used a lot years ago when I first started out, and it still resonates quite a bit, in that enthusiasm. My whole philosophy is attitude, and that's what we go by, the expert on attitude, because it's your attitude, your choice. Well, how do you have a good attitude? Keep it. You got to be enthusiastic about what you're doing. And that's where it starts there. So I like to go into an organization and hopefully infuse some enthusiasm. So, Enthusiator.
I love it. You're right. I think enthusiasm every organization needs that. I was talking in a
Absolutely.
previous podcast today about, whatever it is you do, and that's what the podcast guest said. As a matter of fact, you know her, Ali Schwanke. She talked about how important it is when they're hiring people that she wants those employees to be enthused about what it is that they do. They don't have to be enthused about every component of the company or the business, but be really enthused about what it is you do. And I believe that enthusiasm is contagious. Would you agree?
Yep, I definitely agree. As well as pessimism.
Exactly. just going to say that. Something we do in customer service training, I teach people about, especially in hospitality, greeting people and saying hello, not just to our customers and our guests, but to each other. Sometimes there are some people you don't want to say, how are you to, because you know that they're going to tell you.
That's right. People like that are the ones you definitely, as I'm sure as Ali mentioned earlier, that you want to weed out very quickly. If you don't get it on the onset, you definitely want to nip it in the bud immediately, because it's very, they're infectious and contagious. Both of those attitudes are.
Yeah, and I think some of those with the negative attitudes, some of them have slipped by me, and I'm like, how did that slip by me? But I think they get so good at what they do, they might not always show you the negative side until they're in, and then it can really bring down an entire team.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you think about this, during the interview, everybody's awesome.
Yeah.
For the most part. And then a month later, sometimes even sooner, you're thinking, okay, where'd the person go that I was interviewing? Where'd that person go? What happened to them? Because they start to show their true colors, You know
what I call them? Well, I say this to everybody. I'm like, could you please go back to being interview you? Remember that person? Interview you?
Yep.
Interview you was amazing. That's who we hired. So
that's right. I love that.
Bring that back. But I do think that a lot of times hiring, I've said this before in a previous episode, that hiring is sort of like, in my opinion, it's like signing up for a mail order bride, and you don't really know what you're going to get. You really want to get married and you haven't found anything, so you sign up for this mail order bride, and then you guys have to figure each other out. And
that's right.
That can be really painful.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about how you got into doing what you're doing. I know you go out and you speak and you motivate and you go into companies. Let's talk a little bit about some of the work that you do helping companies. What exactly is it Aaron does?
Well, when I first got started out, I didn't think this was going to be, did not know this was going to be my career path. However, once I started doing it, I enjoyed it. I first started off speaking for high school students, middle school students, and then I went to the collegiate level and then into the corporate and association level. Today, 90% of my talks are in corporate and associations. I still speak for a lot of college and high school students as well. I'll continue to do that. I love both of those sectors equally for different reasons, but love them both the same. And when I go into a company organization, I talk about the attitude of a champion. And I always strictly say, it's your attitude, your choice. And what is the attitude of peak performers as it comes to people in sales professionals, as it comes to the attitude of championship teams, as it comes to the attitude of championship goal setting. So I really talk about the attitudes of high performers and what they do compared to those who don't do it. So regardless of it's in sales, what separates your top earners from your lower income earners? Usually, that attitude is a huge part of it. And it's attitudes towards prospecting, attitudes towards how do you follow up with leads, attitudes towards networking. Now, obviously, you have to have those hard skills, but the intangibles, a lot of it comes down to attitude. And attitude is not the only thing, but it's definitely one of the main things. So as it relates to peak performers in the areas of sales, teamwork, and culture, I go in and really hit hard on what are those characteristics of championship performers as it relates to attitude. And attitude, in my opinion, it's not even just my opinion. When you look at research statistics, they show that even more in regards to even health, those who have a better attitude outlive or have a healthier, more productive lifestyle than those who have a negative one. They recover quickly if they're going through a physical illness, if all things being the same. Those with a positive attitude and a positive outlook tend to do better in the long run.
That's a really good example, health specifically, and I've witnessed that, and any of us, especially as we get older and we watch our parents start to age and get sick, or even with your own children. My mom had open heart surgery last year, and she was terrified. She was so terrified, and I did everything possible just to keep her spirits up because I didn't want her to go into that surgery feeling a certain way. And what was even more interesting is, like, I had gotten her very calmed down the night before the surgery, and the doctor comes in at 9 o'clock at night to have her sign all that, like, if you die paperwork, like, sign here, here's a chance you'll get AIDS, and here's a chance of this, and here's a chance of that. And he came in at 9 o'clock at night to have her sign this paperwork. And I wanted to shoot him.
Wow.
I wanted to shoot him because I'm I'm like, do you know how hard?
Think about when she goes to bed?
That's what she's thinking about when she goes to bed. And I'm like, I have worked so hard to get her spirits into a really good place. And, like, they have no concept in healthcare of, like, they're just doing their paperwork. But I'm like, this would have been good at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. And that's a person, a real life person that's part of the paperwork, not just sort of a number. The hospital. How's mom doing now?
She's awesome. Thank you. She had an amazing, miraculous recovery because she had an aneurysm the size of a cantaloupe on her aorta, and she's little. She's not that big of, she's like 5'3", 119 pounds, and so the fact that she's alive is amazing. So thank you.
That is a blessing.
But
blessing.
Yeah, thank you. Major blessing, and it really taught me a lot about watching that attitude of someone sick or the attitude of someone overworked, like a nursing team.
Right.
Like the attitude. I got into a fight with one of the nurses, and it got ugly because she was just in her own world about, your mother's situation at this moment is not an emergency. And I was like, wow, okay. Well, it's all about perception. For her, it is an emergency. She hasn't eaten in 4 days. That's an emergency. So
that's right.
So let's talk a little bit about, you said, there are those characteristics about attitude. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
When I think about the character attitude, number one, it's a choice. It starts with a decision. Every single one of us and it's like the old adage goes, but it still is very relevant. When I say your attitude, your choice, it's because we have the beauty of being able to decide. We can decide. Every morning we wake up, we can decide, how am I going to look at today? No matter what you woke up to, you still can decide how are you going to approach the day. That's a gift.
Yeah.
And so often I find myself taking it for granted, saying, you know what? You woke up. If nothing else is going good in your life, take your pulse. You woke up. And even how you look at that, the eternal pessimist is going to say, well, I didn't want to wake up. They're not going to find anything to be excited about. And I don't want to say anybody's a lost cause. If someone's a lost cause, it's by choice.
Yeah.
So when I start off by saying, what is the main characteristic, main ingredient? It's decision. And decision is a gift. Gina, that's something that people around the world
love that.
And I'm just making they love that part about America. Not just making it an American thing, but we have choices. But regardless of where you live at and what you're going through, you still have a choice of how you're going to endure it, whether it's hardship or whether it's joy, regardless of what it is. We always have the choice to decide. We always have that. And unfortunately, we let other people, places, and things rewrite the script for us and decide for us. And that's the part that caused a lot of misery in my own life at times and others, is we give other people the pen to our own story. Oh. It's like, no, this is your life. Take the pen back. And I encourage people that take the pen back. This is your life, your attitude. We get one shot at this amazing journey. And I remind myself of that daily, Gina, because the number of losses I've had over the years, and we've all had loss.
Yeah.
By no means I'm trying to make mine more
no, I get it.
Unique or anybody else's. But it's really galvanized my belief and galvanized my actions that, you know what, you get to decide. That's a gift you have every day, what your attitude is going to be towards regardless of what your occupation may be, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, whether it's a painter, a garbage man, or an attorney, a writer, etc. I don't care what it is. You have the option and the beauty and the gift to decide how your attitude is going to be lived that day. And you do that moment by moment.
I'm so in line with you on that. And I really love, I'm always looking for a different quote to pull out of a podcast that I can use in our marketing. And I love, we give other people the pen to our story. Take the pen back.
Mm-hmm. Take it back.
Take it back. And I think, like you said, I think we all have experienced this in some way, shape, or form. I know I've certainly have experienced this a lot in business. I'm sure you can relate. Everyone has an opinion about what you should be doing in your business and how you should be showing up. And you know what you should be doing? You should, and you should,
yes.
and you should. And you know what? And I got caught up in that. I actually got caught up in that. This is 2017. I got caught up in that in 2015, 2016. And I got really caught up into literally like I was chasing my tail, like a hamster on a hamster wheel, because I was going in so many different directions of what people said I should be doing. And I lost me. And I finally came back to me. And the irony is I came back to the original me, but better, right? And it's because I lost faith in myself. I lost confidence in myself. We all have that ability for that to happen because we're listening to the noise.
That's right. I love it.
So I love that quote. I'm going to pull that out because I think that's a really great quote. But what about the people? So how can you teach attitude? What's Aaron's opinion on that?
You know what? I do believe that you can teach attitude. You can teach anything. But at the end of the day, though, it goes into the person you're teaching whether they want to receive it or not.
Right.
We can learn anything. But at the same time, attitude can be formed, it can be taught, it can be shaped. Some people are just, obviously genetically different because of experiences. So it goes into the nature versus nurture argument. My degrees in psychology, so my background goes to that. However, people say, well, it was the way that he was brought up. That's why he had a negative attitude. The way that she was brought up, what she saw. You know what? Yes and no. Mm-hmm. In that, I got buddies, and you know where I'm going with this. I got a few buddies I grew up with, one in particular, okay? Love him to death. By no means have I ever mentioned his name. He has the life that he has now and has been living the past number of years because he grew up in their home that was had some pretty dysfunctional situations. Let me say that with a disclaimer. Every home has got some dysfunction. There is no home that doesn't have some level of dysfunction. Some are just more severe than others.
Yeah.
And it blows me away when I hear teachers or educators or people say, well, you don't understand, Aaron. He or she comes from a dysfunctional home. I'm thinking, that's great. So do I.
God. We're just...
So it doesn't matter if it's financial, physical, marital, domestic. It doesn't. Everybody's got some dysfunction. And by no means am I discrediting or minimizing traumatic childhood experiences. By no means am I doing that. But for everyone who claims they are the way they are in a bad situation because they're growing up in a bad situation, there's another one that says, because I was born and raised in a traumatic, bad childhood situation, this is why I'm doing well. So it also comes down to how are you going to decide, are you going to allow your childhood to write your story? Or are you going to allow your childhood to rewrite your story? At the end of the day, I always come back to you still own the pen. You still own it.
Yeah, so
I got a buddy of mine who's been dysfunction for years, but it's why I was growing up. His brother went to the military, did great, productive, solid family goals because the way I grew up, I was not going to be that way. He decided.
I talked about this in the intro that I recorded, that your degree's in psychology, and I minored in psychology. I'm a huge believer in it. I think when you understand people and how the mind works,
right,
that's going to improve everything. But for those people suffering that negative attitude, that they get stuck in that, I'd love your thoughts on this. I believe that they're stuck in it because they don't know any other way, because they haven't seen maybe any other way. Maybe they haven't had someone to just say, hey, wake up. Right? Maybe the parents didn't do it, but maybe there's somebody else that can do it. And when you talked about the teachers, that really irritates me, because it's like they're enabling the dysfunction to be an excuse for them not to perform.
I think what you're asking me basically, how does one how do they get back up if they have a bad attitude, or how do we reprogram?
Yeah, I mean, is it up to people like us to see it, especially at a younger age? Obviously, I'm not going to go and hit someone upside of the head as an adult, get your stuff together. But can we? Although I recently did do that, and I'll share that with you in a minute. Does it start at trying to help these younger people, especially since you've talked to a lot of schools? Does it start there to help rewire people?
Yes. You know, in schools, in fact, just last night, it's ironic, Gina, we're talking about this right now. Just last night, there was a story that came on where there was a teacher that she adopted one of her students, 16-year-old kid, a teacher that was working at a alternative school. And this young man shared in the interview that he would never let his heart go to anybody else again. You know, 6 or 7 foster homes. You know, the older they get, the less likely it is to get adopted. And he asked her, "Would you adopt me?" And she did. She adopted him. 16-year-old young male, adopted him and gave him, she basically allowed him the opportunity to rewrite his past and his future, and to rewrite his future on what it could be like and the opportunities. So I say that to say this, in that even though someone it starts with kids. If we can reach them at a young age, their chances increase dramatically. And I'm not talking about just attitude. I'm talking about education. I'm talking about crime rates. I'm talking about healthy relationships, a healthy view of themselves, etc. And helping me sometimes let them see that you're going to fail sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think sometimes our society, the past, 10 or 15 years in particular, we figure the best way to give them a healthy image is to give everybody a trophy. Well, me and you both know that's not reality.
Yeah.
That's not reality. Everyone doesn't get a trophy. You know, it takes work ethic. It takes discipline. It takes sacrifice. So I think when we start young by teaching them solid core principles on what it takes to be a productive citizen, hardworking citizen of society, it's got to start young. Because the older students I start to speak with, it's harder because they've been ingrained so much and get set in their habits, which is key, and get solidified in their thinking patterns. So it starts at an early age. And in fact, for every bad compliment that you give someone, from what research has told, it takes 5 positive things to negate that one negative comment, one negative thing.
Wow.
It takes 5 plus. So every time a kid hears something negative, now think about this. When that young man, sometimes educators say this, and even I'll even bring it to the corporate place as well. I don't know why this student is so tough to deal with in the morning. Because you know what? If that kid heard 4 or 5 comments before 8 o'clock in the morning, it's going to take 20 or 30 just to get back to even again.
Oh my God.
If they've heard 4 or 5 negative comments, and if it takes 5 to negate that, it's going to take 25 to 30 positive comments, 25, 30 positive things to get this kid thinking that I'm not just a piece of crap running around like my dad just told me, or my mom told me, or my brother told me, or my kindergarten man told me. So it takes a lot. And sometimes educators wonder why this person is in such a bad mood or why they're checking out. If you've been knocked down that many times before the 8 o'clock bell rung, you're probably pretty down to at that age. But let's skip ahead to the adults.
Yeah.
When they're saying, you know what, Susan just seems like she's just checked out in this morning's sales meeting. Or man, Tom seems like he is just livid this morning. You don't know if Tom was slapped or Susan was slapped or if they were ridiculed on the way out the house by their spouse or significant other or not. So often we need to take time and take stock and say, okay, what's going on with this person first before I start passing judgment about their attitude. But to answer your point, it's got to start early. It's got to start young.
It's got to start young, but to your point, when you move on to the adult piece of it, there's a whole other avenue here. Okay. And you're going out there and you're doing this in organizations. It's not just the changing of the negative attitudes. It's actually equipping let's say leaders or coworkers, colleagues. It's equipping them with the tools to help those people. So that's another piece of the puzzle, right? Because I don't think a lot of people have that skill set.
No, they don't. And what you bring up a good point, Gina, in that you can't, okay, for instance, me, former football player, back in college. Coach says, you need to go out there and hit hard. I think, Coach, you didn't give me any equipment. I'm going to get hurt. I don't know what are you talking about? Or, Aaron, you need to go out there and make the catch as a receiver. You need to go out and catch. But if they don't equip me with the tools and the techniques of how to catch a ball, if I've never done it before, if I've always done it the wrong way, hence wrong attitude, how can I correct something without correction? That seems very elementary,
right?
But it's the truth. How do you make corrections without learning what's correct? So, to your point,
it's like being a football player without a coach to tell you what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. You're just randomly out there.
Yeah, there's no play.
To your point, you definitely have to equip people with the tools and techniques and the strategies on how to improve their attitudes.
Well, what are some suggestions on that? So I've got like, negative Nancy at work who, we keep telling her, Nancy, you gotta adjust your attitude. And Nancy says, what attitude? I don't have an attitude. What do you do with that?
When someone is oblivious to their negative attitude, but everyone else is very cognizant of it and realize that many times what you have to start doing, and it sounds, I don't want to say overkill, but document those things and then show them, give them evidence. This is the performance. This is what has been said about you. And it's not just one person. It's everyone singing the same song. Yeah. And regardless if they were not singing the same songs, folks, we're not out to get you. But Susan, Nancy, Bob, whatever, this is what the word and the report is on you. It's just kind of like when you're recruiting an individual to come work for your company. You're going to do a background check. You're going to talk to their peers. You're going to talk to former employers, their friends, their buddies. I say the same thing you have to do with the individual in the organization doesn't realize they have a bad attitude. Do a background check. And what that, I call it an attitude check. Check with the people around them. How does Susan, what's your perception of Susan's attitude? What's your perception of John's attitude? Your peers are going to say, they're going to say it.
Yeah.
And obviously it's anonymous. You don't say who it is.
Right.
But I always say, do a background check. Do an attitude check. If you think your attitude is great, that's great. Well, let's talk with your peers and people work with. Let's see what they think. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah. And then you take it a step further. You already alluded to this earlier. Sometimes these attitudes are attitudes because there's other stuff going on that's underlying that impacts people. And I think as leaders of organizations, it's on you as the leader to have the emotional intelligence, also hard to come by, have the emotional intelligence to be able to read body language, tone of voice, notice differences and changes in behavior, and then have the ability to step out and go, hey, Aaron, you just seem a little bit off than your usual self. And I have found that approach has worked. And that's when people kind of let down their guard. And I'm like, I'm not upset. I just feel like something's off with you. And you're not performing like you usually do. I mean, and those are those one-offs, so you've got the negative Nancy's that are always negative, but they might have some horrible thing going on at home every day of their life.
Right. And that's why I think communication is key. When you see someone that normally is in a pretty decent attitude, when there's a change, that something's going on. That's when you have to communicate with that person.
Yeah.
Now, if this is someone that's always had a negative attitude, obviously there's some steps and measures, as we mentioned, that need to be taking place. But also in the real world and an organization, there's also consequences. Because you can't keep allowing someone with a negative attitude, and they know they do, and they do, but you allow them to keep coming to the organization, to keep coming to work day out. What ends up happening? You're going to start losing the people who actually like their job.
Yeah.
But they realize that life is too short to work with this person who's negative every day. I'm not going to do it. That's what usually happens. And the thing about people with negative attitudes who don't want to correct it, here's my thing. Hire slow, fire fast.
Yep.
It's not fair to the people who actually have a great attitude and enjoy the organization to come to work and have to deal with negative Nancy all day long, or demanding the meeting Dave all day long.
Yeah.
Life's too short.
Yeah.
And especially in this day and age, this generation, the traditionalists, as you both know, the generations, traditionalists, and even a lot of your boomers, they would stay at a job 20, 30 years.
Right.
Generation X and millennials were like, life's too short.
Yeah.
But see, the previous generations, they worked to live. I'm sorry, they lived to work. They lived to work.
Right.
Our generations, that different generation, that 50 and under for the most part, going, work is just how, I don't live to work. I just work. I don't do it like they did.
Yeah.
They refuse to do that. They figure life is too short. Okay.
And I think us Gen Xers are actually in some ways worse than the millennials, because we are the first generation to experience a high rate of divorce and latchkey children syndrome. And we're very autonomous and anti-authority. And, so we're probably, and we're the up and coming, from a management and leadership perspective, our age group, we're just not, I struggle with people with bad attitudes and woe is them, and they never get a break. And you know what? Every break I got, I made for myself. I'm sure you can say the same thing.
That's right. We put ourselves in positions to be lucky, as some people call it. Oh, you're lucky. No, it's because I took a lot of risk.
Yeah.
I made a lot of sacrifices. And the more chances you take, as me and you both know, eventually the numbers catch up with you. And it works out in your favor.
Exactly.
But
again, let's back up a little bit on the, what would you recommend to a company that doesn't know how to manage, manage in general, manage attitudes, manage performance? Like, should they be doing a certain kind of training? Should those employees be doing something in particular to get those skills on how to be observant to behavior? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think training is effective. And the problem is a lot of organizations, I don't want to say a lot, some organizations, I'll put it that way, they bring in a speaker for, 45 minutes, an hour or two. And it's like, yeah, that's great for the year. It doesn't work that way. Behavior is not changed by a 45-minute or 2-hour presentation. There's got to be some long-term development. You don't go to the gym January 1st and 2nd and say, yeah, that'll do it for the year. I'm good. No. If you want any lasting change, that's got to be a habit that's developed. And coming up on the new year, the gyms are loving right now. Health and fitness industry is loving right now, because they will get a huge surge of business and sign-ups and memberships.
Yeah.
But it come about January 21st, February 5th, they'll have all those monthly memberships, but still won't have the wear and tear of the equipment.
Yeah.
Because a large percentage of those who signed up won't come back again. Why? Because it's just like the thing. A lot of organizations bring in a speaker, keynote, like myself. So I'm only kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here, and that I do this. I'm telling you, I see it. They bring me in for 45 minutes to an hour, and I enjoy doing it. But the thing I stress to them is, this is great. If you enjoyed this, that's awesome. But don't think that this is the magic pill. So I want to take the stress off me in that. I'm not even stressed, but take responsibility. If you think my 1-hour talk is going to create a long-lasting change, you're fooling yourself. Now, if you want information on a regular basis and going through a process, I'm your guy. I'll come and do a keynote. But whether it's me or someone else, you better have some sort of long-term sustainability training. Because habits do not change from a 45-minute keynote talk. That's great entertainment. That's a great shot of a dose of inspiration / motivation. But you know what? That's not going to work 2 or 3, 4 weeks from down the road. In fact, the reality is this. Most people, after you're done talking, the next day really don't know much what you talked about.
Yeah.
Now, there's the exception of the few that took notes, et cetera, and everything else. But behavior, the way that's changed, it's got to be long-term development. So, and answer your question, am I all for training people? Absolutely. Management must get behind that. Leadership must get behind it, but not just get behind it. Leadership, they have to be the examples of long-term development.
You are preaching to the choir.
I'm preaching to myself a lot.
I know.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I asked you that question. It's interesting as I do these podcasts, and because I go in and I speak, and I go in and I train, and you and I have that similar background. And I asked that question as if I don't do that, because I wanted to just hear the words come out of your mouth. There's nothing to me more frustrating as a trainer when I get that call that says, hey, can you come do an hour of training? And how much is that? And I go, okay, let's talk about your desired outcomes from this. What are you trying to change? What are the challenges you're having? My biggest pet peeve was like, can you come and do a team building for an hour? And I hate that word. And I'm like, I actually now have created a talk that says we need another team building, said no one ever. Right?
I love that. I love
Okay.
that.
And it's
No one ever.
said no one ever. Actually I wrote a blog on that. I'll find that blog and send it to you.
Please.
And it's like you don't need another team building. You need another leadership developing. That's what you need. But they don't know how to articulate that they're having challenges and problems. And they're like, oh, it's team building. That'll fix everything. And we'll do it in an hour.
Right.
And I give the same speech. I'm like, this is not going to sustain. I can come in. I'm like, the price for an hour is the same as 3 hours. Well, why? It's just an hour. I put the same amount of effort preparing for the 1 hour as I do for the 8 hours. So you take it or leave it. That's fine. You want the 1 hour, but I'm not going to change your organization in an hour. And what is crazy for people like you and me is that then the attitude becomes, well, we never have a return on investment with training. And I literally, in a pitch session with a Fortune 500 company, and we were top 3 bidders for this contract. And one of them in this pitch session, there's 5 of them. And he says, so what are you going to do to make sure that this sustains? And I said, what are you going to do to make sure that this sustains? And we didn't get the contract. Thank God. Mm-hmm. Because it's like you have to buy into it as the organization and as the leader. So, wouldn't you agree that I think people don't necessarily invest in that long-term development that you talked about because they don't know they don't know how to. Who's going to manage that process? I have to wonder if that's why they don't do it as much.
I think, I mean, you both be in this industry. Here's what I think about this. In that one, they want a G5 organization, G5 jet. Mm-hmm. That's what they want.
Yeah.
But they're only willing to invest in a crop duster.
Yeah.
And they expect amazing, they want a smooth ride. They want this thing to get to point A to point B in 1 hour. They don't want to do a lot of work. They want a flight reception, a flight, a stewardess, attendant. They want all of these things, but they still have a crop duster mentality. Well, it's going to cost us that much. Yes, it's going to cost you that much. And then the question that you both posed, Adam, I know you posed as well. What's it going to cost you not to pay this?
Yeah, just you read my mind.
A lot of people don't look at that cost. They just look at it's going to cost me this much. What's it costing you? What's it costing you right now because you're failing or because your organization is so dysfunctional to epic proportions or that you have your turnover rate and attrition rate is astronomical or your stockholders are furious because of performance? What's it costing you already? What have you already spent on dysfunction? And are you willing to continue that cost? Or are you willing to invest in your organization, your people, and see a return on it? And to your point, like you mentioned, it's like, what are you going to do to make sure there's long-term sustainability here?
Yeah.
So often they want to get themselves off the hook when they're the ones that create the problem and they want sales to clean up the mess. Yeah. But yet they don't want to keep things clean long-term by doing the work. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in any other area of our lives. But unfortunately, we think our organization think it's going to work that way in corporate America. It's not going to work that way.
It's so short-sighted and so annoying.
Yes. Our coach, when we won the national championship in 94 for Nebraska. 95, they wanted to get it. I wasn't on that team in 95, but I was on the one in 94. But we played in 3 straight national championships. We played on one in 1993. We lost. And I remember Coach Osborne telling us, guys, the same amount of focus, intensity, energy, discipline, hard work, sacrifice it took for us to get to this game in 93. It's going to take the same thing in 94. It's not always going to be comfortable. There's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some bumps in the roads. You have to be willing to pay the price long term. We can't practice just once in August to kick off the year and say, hey, we're good. Let's just wait till next week and play the next game. No, there's a reason why you practice every day. There's a reason time it hurts. You're going to get some bumps. You're going to get some bruises. There is no quick fix. You can eat a Twinkie all you want when you're hungry. But in an hour and a half, 2 hours, that stomach is going to be going berserk again because it's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Organizations want a Twinkie fix. It's like it's not going to work. Yeah, you can have a Twinkie speaker come in and it'll work for about an hour and a half. People will feel great. They'll get a sugar high. They're bouncing off walls, high-fiving. But they're going to, in fact, not only that, once you eat and digest something that's not long-term sustainable, you become hangry. You know what I'm talking about, when you hungry and pissed off at the same time.
Yeah.
And organizations find themselves the same way. Well, we just had this tweet. We had this speaker come in. We just watched this awesome YouTube video. Why are we more pissed off than we were before we ate it? Because it's not long-term sustainability. It was a quick fix.
Oh my
gosh. I have to tell myself that all the time. I'm eating Twinkies. And I freaking love them.
And you called yourself a Twinkie speaker. That's like that is the best outtake of this interview.
Yes. And anyone who thinks you got some people out there, and I'm not knocking anyone. I've heard some amazing speakers. But I'm gonna be honest with you. I know good and well what I say. It ain't gonna last that long because it's only one thing. Now, if there's some continued growth there, that's one thing.
Yeah.
No one has that type of power to change someone's life long term forever. There's got to be some building. There's got to be some reinforcements, etc. Are there life-changing speakers? Yes. I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying is this: let's not get full of ourselves.
Yeah.
There needs to be long-term sustainability. There's got to be follow-up. There's got to be work. Now, we can be a catalyst to start something, but after a while, that begins to wear off. That's why we have to have sustainability.
And I don't know your speaking rates, and you don't have to reveal them to me, or you could offline. But you know, there's some speakers out there that get some crazy money, right? They get some crazy money to come speak. Let's just put it out there, $50,000 to $100,000.
Yep.
And they come and they speak for an hour. And the company's like, oh, we've just invested in this amazing, it's not a Twinkie speaker. It's like the pound cake speaker. I'm making up a new name. It's a little bit better than a Twinkie. You know, and they bring that speaker to the annual meeting and look at the money we invested. I'm like, okay, for $100,000, I could create training for a year for you.
Absolutely.
That is sustainable and ongoing, and good on you. You brought in that guy for $100,000. But I think that's also ego driven on those decisions.
Yeah. And on the rates of speakers, you know, I mean, you both have colleagues that know people who just got insane rates and they get paid it. You know, I have no problem with the market. With the marketplace going to pay it, and they perceive that there's value, I say more power to them. That's the beautiful, beautiful thing of capitalism, etc. However, I will say this on the flip side of it too, though, is that, you know, a lot of you figure your speakers that are commanding that much, usually celebrities. So for them, I look at a lot of the organizations. They know if they have, for instance, like a former president, an actor, a superstar athlete, entertainer, singer, etc., it's going to draw more people to the conference.
Right.
You know. So they're going to get more. They understand that, okay, if I bring this person, we're going to have more butts in the seats. So therefore, it'll offset that quite a bit of doing that. So I understand the business move of it too.
That depends. Like, for sure. Like conferences like that, and it's a let's say an association, and they're putting on a conference, and they make money on that. That makes sense, right? It's a draw. I mean, I was just talking to Allie, and I'm like, have you seen Seth Godin in person? I have. And I'm like, you know, that sold me. I'm like, I'm going to go because I'm going to see Seth, and I'm going to see Simon Sinek, and I'm going to see Gary Vee. I'll speak live, right? That to me I'm buying that. But when you're looking at a company like, let's say Zappos, which I've spent 3 days at their culture camp, and what they do is amazing for sustainability. They have like Zappos University, right? So they've got it going on. You know, they'll bring in a Brené Brown to speak at their annual, actually wasn't even their annual meeting. They have quarterly hands-on meetings. It was like a quarterly meeting, and I was there for it. That's different, right? It's for all the employees and not for the outside. But Zappos also does a ton of other great stuff to ensure sustainability. That was a gift, right? When they bring in those speakers. I'm talking about like that employee level when you invest in like, we're going to do this glitzy annual meeting and bring in a great speaker when that money could have been spent better.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. Totally agree.
Oh my gosh, we could go on forever and forever.
I'm looking at my clock. I'm like, oh my gosh, I said my next one starts in 6 minutes.
I know.
Well, you know what that means? That means we just got to do it again. Maybe we do a series on attitude.
You know? I'm looking to launch a new
Maybe
podcast next year, and I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. So I say, well, we'll schedule a call and we can talk about that, because I think there's some stuff that you and I can weave in and out of together.
I totally agree with that. Even as you were talking, I was just kind of jotting things down, and it's like the old passage, iron sharpens iron, and you definitely sharpened me up in this brief time. It just makes me, when you talk to people like yourself, this definitely wasn't a Twinkie experience with you, because these are tangible things I know I can go actually and do. So I am honored and blown away, and I got to thank Ali again for referring to us to each other, and I really appreciate you carving out time and allowing me in your space, because that's something you've cultivated, you've created, and you welcome me into your house, your digital house, and I sincerely appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, I know that we got to wrap up because you're going on to your next appointment. I have all kinds of ways for people to contact you, so I'm going to include that in the show notes for this podcast so that they can reach out to you. So thank you so much for being on this on my podcast today, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you. And I wish all of you out there listening, I wish you the best. I know we're wrapping up 2017. You're finished strong. Finish strong. I talk about finishing strong all the time. And also, as you're finishing, folks, begin to prepare for 2018. Wish you all the best.
Amen. All right, Aaron. Okay, thank you, everybody, for listening. We're going to wrap up. Aaron, I'm going to send you an email. So I want to follow up with you on another call. So I'll send you an email to try to get that scheduled.
I'd love it. Have a great one now. Thank you.
Okay,
again.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
You bet.
All right, everybody, we're wrapping up this podcast. Aaron had to go on to his next appointment. So thank you for listening to today's episode of The Pivotal Leader with Aaron Davis and myself. Gosh, it went by so fast. You can find show notes for this episode, including all of Aaron's contact information, on our website at thepivotalleader.com. The Pivotal Leader is a production of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. Remember, you can find our podcast on iTunes, and if you're an iTunes subscriber, please leave a rating or review, or both. Don't forget to email me any questions you might have about employee engagement or customer acquisition, or heck, based on today's episode with Aaron, attitude. Let's talk attitude. Any questions that you might have or advice you might want, shoot me an email, and I am happy to answer those. I'll reply back an email. Don't worry, I'm not going to chase you down for anything else, or I'll put that in an upcoming episode. If you have ideas or suggestions for upcoming episodes, or are there speakers that you want to hear, guests that you want to hear, also send me that information. So once again, thank you for listening to The Pivotal Leader. And until next time, if you're feeling stuck in your business, it's probably time for you to pivot. You've been listening to The Pivotal Leader. To learn more about how to shift your culture and pivot to success, visit pivot10results.com. That's pivot10results.com.